Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the CUET General Test Exam 2024, subject code 501, which was conducted almost throughout the entire country except in Delhi on May 15th at 5 p.m. The reason I'm making this video is because I'm sure all of you across social media have seen the various videos being made by coaching agencies, independent creators, and various educators across the social media about the NTA mismanagement and the errors, ambiguities, and difficulties faced by all the students and test takers in the CUET exam process. And there haven't been many videos focusing on general test in particular. And my purpose of making this video isn't even about the technical issues, such as the delay in the exam, or delay in giving the question papers, or forcing the students to give signatures in the middle of the exam, wasting time. Or we've seen how in the Northeast, the exam was ended at 9:30 p.m. with no provision of any water or food. And you can even see these headlines on the screen right now showing the mismanagement, chaos across India due to the CUET exam. But that's not what I'm focusing about here. Those are obviously the NTA efficiency issues. But what I'm focusing on is the question paper itself, because that itself is the inherent error in general test. That would be the reason for most people missing out. Not the time management, not the technical difficulties, not the problem with the invigilator. No, this entire structure of this question paper is the reason for your poor marks, your poor scores, and in the future, in a few months, your poor admissions. So now let me get into the crux of this video. We're going to cover this. The pattern of general test CUET, and then we'll compare it to PYQs because it's a new exam, so we'll compare it to 2022 PYQs and 2023 previous year questions. And then we'll also compare it to other UG entrance exams like CLAT to see how it fares in terms of difficulty and the topics being covered. Now, right now you can see in front of you the exact snippet from the general test, from the CUET UG website of the syllabus for general test. It has 6 topics: general knowledge, current affairs, general mental ability, numerical ability, quantitative reasoning, and logical and analytical reasoning. So there's 6 topics, which means there should be equal weightage for all of them, right? No. If we look at the question paper, there was 27 questions from GK and current affairs. 7 of them at most were from the general knowledge part, and they weren't that easy. They were also connected to current affairs somehow, except a few here and there, a few science questions, and a few currency related questions. I think at max 4 were doable by the students for GK, and the other 20 were straight up current affairs, which weren't even relevant. Of course they're all relevant because they all happened, but from a 12th grader's perspective, from a UG entry student, were they doable is the question that we're trying to address here. And there's 17 QA questions, quantitative aptitude, and 17 logical reasoning questions. So obviously, straight out of the bat, as soon as you look at the paper, you know that nearly half the question paper, 30 out of 60 questions, are purely from GK and current affairs, which is definitely not equal weightage. Now, coming to the difficulty level, the quants are mostly doable. If you covered all the topics, then it's doable. But then again, there was neglect for certain topics because obviously they didn't have equal weightage, so they didn't give questions on certain important topics. Like there's no questions about time and work. There was no questions about profit and loss. There was only one about discount. There weren't any about CP and SP. And the list goes on and on. Even in logical reasoning, there was 2 ambiguous questions. One about the non-verbal reasoning with the stick figures, and the one about with the square diagram and the numbers and letters. Even that was extremely ambiguous and difficult for students. And coming to the GK and CA part, there's not much to say about this. It was downright difficult. So now let's do the PLQ analysis. We'll look at the 2022 and 2023 papers, and we'll also look at the CLAT exam, which can be used as a benchmark because it's also a relevant competitive exam where a few lakhs of students write the exam for UG entrance, and we'll just compare the difficulty level of the same current affairs and GK questions. So in front of you right now, you have the question paper from June 1st, 2023, CUET General Test. So obviously we know that last year and the year before, the exam was conducted in multiple shifts because of technical issues and the incapacity of the NTA to conduct in one day. And there was difficulty level variations between the later exams and the earlier exams, but this year they said they'll do away with normalization, but obviously that's not the case because there's another exam on the 29th in Delhi. But we're not going to be talking about all that. We're going to be talking about the questions and their difficulty level and the distribution of weightage between the three sections in particular. So the first question we have, which among the following is not a type of direct tax? Very straightforward, basic general knowledge question from the topic Indian economy. So I'm sure all of you know that in general knowledge, there's a few essential areas that we have to cover. Political science, geography, world and Indian, Indian economy, and then science and technology, more specifically physics, chemistry, biology, and then history, ancient, modern, medieval, and important days. First in India, first in the world, first female, first male, and like Indian superlatives and those type of things. Very straightforward. It's a pretty defined syllabus actually. That's why GK is achievable, because there's a defined syllabus for the most part. And so this question, the answer is obviously sales tax. It's sales tax and indirect tax. And obviously it's an easy question. It's from Indian economy. Now, coming to the second question, this is a logical reasoning clocks question. This is also logical reasoning. And now, fourth question from general knowledge. Which blood group in human is a universal donor? Again, another very basic science and technology question from biology. Titan is the largest natural satellite of which planet? This is also from space, which is technically also from geography, astronomy. Important days. When World Statistics Day is celebrated? This is the first quant question. There's one about ratios and proportions. And then this one, also very simple. International borders and border lines. The Maginot Lines between France and Germany, Durand Lines, Pakistan and Afghanistan, 38 parallels, North Korea, South Korea, 40th is USA and Canada. Again, also very straightforward. When was Chandrayaan-1 established? Again, here, this is not a dynamic question. It's a static question. When was Chandrayaan-1 established? So it's obviously a history-based, modern history technically, or a science and technology question. We have a distance and direction question, averages question. This one is technically, it's a science and technology question, but also very doable. Simplification from number systems, coding and decoding, mensuration. This is a little difficult. It's a pretty specific science and technology question, and you can leave it. That's why they give 10 choice. Speed of sound, very fundamentals of science, fundamentals of physics. Speed of sound will be fastest in. It's a speed of sound travels fastest in a solid, so it'll obviously be the iron bar. And then we have a trigonometry question here, blood relations, coordinate geometry. This is, I guess you can call this a current affairs question. When was One Nation, One Fast Tax scheme implemented? So now we have 2 current affairs and I think 8 GK questions. Big Bang Theory was given by another static GK, science and technology. Embedded problem figures, logical reasoning, data interpretation, ratios and proportions, cathode rays, and again, science. That's why there were so many science questions in the previous 2023 question paper that most of the aspirants who based their preparation on this would obviously refer to science and technology more. They would study it the most. We have a calendar question, another science question. And here, ratios and proportions, pretty simple. Indian geography, lakes, obviously a must-cover topic. Chilika Lake is in Odisha. And syllogisms, we have a series question. This is modern history, so nicknames, and even the options are very clear. If you know one, obviously if you're a political science student, you know that Frontier Gandhi is Abdul Ghaffar Khan. So D1, if you know that, that's all you need to know. So I'm telling you, the difficulty level of last year was extremely easy. Even with minimal preparation, it would feel moderate. We have some more logical reasoning questions here. Books and authors. There wasn't a single question for books and authors in this year's exam. And even this. These are all books that were popular. Popular authors and popular books. So Train to Pakistan, we know it's a Khushwant Singh book. And we can guess that it's always possible written by Kiran Bedi because she's the first female IPS officer, D4. These are all such easy questions, doable questions. One about folding figures. One about comparison percentages. Coming to the percentage question, there's one ambiguous percentage question in this year's question paper. It gave us 2 figures. It gave us the pass mark and the marks that he got, and it said he failed by 10%. If you look at this past year question paper, he said 33% of the total marks at the pass. He got 148 marks and failed by 50 marks. So now we know 148 plus 50 is 198. So 198 is the pass mark. So 33% of the total mark will be 198. and they can easily calculate the pass percent. That's what the question model should be like. But this year they gave us 2 figures and it was also ambiguous. Another straight up science question. Science question again. This is I guess you can call this a modern history because revolt of 1857. Indian geography, borders, a very essential topic. Important days. That's the second question about important days. Clocks, analogy, interest rate, seating arrangement, probability. Another science. This is like the 6th science question we've seen so far. Analogy, ages and problems on ages. This is a Venn diagram question. Time and speed. So yeah, that's covers 60 questions. So I haven't kept an exact count, but there are at least 22 quant questions, around 23 logical, and that leaves about 15 of these GK questions only. I think there's two current affairs questions, and the remaining 13 or 14 were all GK questions, and 7 of those were science questions, general science, physics, biology, chemistry. Now coming to May 21st, similar pattern here. Obviously the pattern was consistent throughout this year. We have a Venn diagram question, one polity question. So constitution is the framework for the governance of the country. It serves the country in maintaining good relations with our neighboring countries. Both statement. Obviously, this is a very doable question as well. Another science question, major constituent natural gas is methane. Nobel Prizes. So in awards, they usually ask about the major awards. Bharat Ratna. Of course, they asked one about Raman Magsaysay Award, which is in honor of the former Philippines president. That question is valid. It's okay. You'd expect to prepare for that. And there's one about which para athlete won the Padma Shri, I think. See, the thing is, if we look at the total count, people in the previous years, they only asked Padma Vibhushan and Bharat Ratna because only those are given to 5 to 10 people at max. The Bharat Ratna is given to 5 people. Vibhushan is also given to 5 people. So those are the main that you should cover. Those are the headline news. But this year they are asking about matching the following. So you have to know the names and which award they won, which is of course very complicated. Now probability, distance and direction. This is pretty simple. Again, these are like very easy questions. These are biscuits actually. Which of the following is not a state? Ladakh, obviously, it's a union territory. We have one about linear equations, percentages, series, figure formation. Obviously, LCM HCF question, sequences, and this one. This is technically it's a GK question, but it also can be considered logical reasoning. So major is to lieutenant as squadron leader. So we have to know about the armed forces, which is also a GK question. This is a speed question, calendars, mensuration, another books and authors. This year there's not a single question on books and authors. Which of the following didn't receive? So you have to know a little bit about sports, obviously. And then again, another science question, SI units and physical quantities, trigonometry, APs. There's not a single question about arithmetic progression this year. Not a single one. Trigonometry again, probability. There's also no probability questions, by the way. Which of the following is a metal? Very straightforward questions. Selling price, profit and loss. The Nobel Prize, they didn't ask about. I was expecting questions about the Nobel Prize because in sciences, there's one about the mRNA vaccine. Or they would ask one about the Nobel Peace Prize or the Economics Prize, but no, of course, they didn't ask anything about that. They did give one about this, deficiencies in vitamins. This was a valid question in this year's paper. Clocks, percent. Again, even the same percentage questions about marks, they're always in the same format. The marks that he got, the percentage of total marks, and the maximum marks. Very straightforward questions. This is science and technology. Modern history. There was no question for medieval, modern, or ancient history this year. Nothing about the freedom movement, nothing about the colonial, nothing about the Mughal rule, nothing about the Buddhism or Jainism like they asked last year. Rivers and cities. This is also a very important theme that they covered last year. Languages. Coding and decoding. Venn diagrams. Odd one out. This is another. See, this one, if you know about the Raman Magsaysay Award, then you can also answer this because the first winner from India of the Raman Magsaysay Award was Vinoda Bhave for the Bhudan Ramdan movement. So if you can know those awards, then you can answer this. But this year, they asked about the recent winner, But based on the trends, the student would assume that it would be about the past winners. For example, last year they asked a question about which year did Arvind Kejriwal win this Raman Magsaysay Award, which is 2006. Or when did Ravish Kumar won this same award? Time and work, there's 0 questions left this year. Ages and problems on ages, ranking and arrangement, ages, cubes. There's not a single question about cubes and dices this year. Syllogisms. There's 1 question this year compared to so many last year. Sobriquets, or cities and their nicknames. They had not a single question this year. Last year there was at least 2 per question paper, but this year there were none. Figure completion. Again, basic Indian economy questions, export and import relationship. Books and authors. There's a 2nd question in each paper. This one is pretty straightforward. The deficiency and diseases. Arrangements. Indian scientists. There was also no question about Indian scientists and their discoveries and their awards. And also there's no questions about agricultural revolutions, which they asked last year a lot. Yeah, just like I was mentioning, there's no question about revolution and their impacts. Coordinate geometry. There's not a single question about from this year. Lines and angles. This is for mensuration. Interest, simple interest, compound interest. Yeah, that's it. This is 2023. So now you might be wondering, okay, maybe this was the pattern for 2023, but it was different in the previous year. But no. Now let's look at the question paper for 2022. Is it similar? Let's find out. So the first question is from figure counting. There's not a single question about this year about figure counting. Blood relations. These are logical reasoning questions. And we'll also look at the count here. So last year it was about 20 at max. But usually it was 15 current affairs, 25, 20, around that. It was not, there was never that much focus on current affairs. Or best case it was equal. So coming to this year's question, this is 2022, August. So the first general knowledge current affairs starts from 31st question. So this is talking about global peace index. Obviously this is a current affairs question from that year. And then this is a geography question about winds. And this is one about ancient history, the different periods. So we have the Mesolithic, Chalcolithic, Neolithic, Paleolithic questions. That's pretty straightforward. Indian polity. This year there's not a single question about, there's one. Only about the Article 324 and the Election Commission. There's only one. Planning Commission, Indian economy. This is countries and their nicknames. Not a single question this year. First of man, first of woman, first who did this, first who did that. This is all straightforward. The first man who did walk into space, Alexander Leonov. Science, physics. Primary colors. This is an extremely easy question. Computer questions, SRAM. This is static random access memory. And this is obviously another current affairs question. This is the second set. There's 3. One about films, one about the EIU index, and one about the global peace index. So that's 3 so far. And then we have books and authors. Again, they didn't even include that topic this year, which is extremely disappointing for those who prepared. And this is pretty relevant. In fact, this year, since there was elections in 2023 for 8 states, they should have matched the following with the new chief ministers and their states. Or they could have asked how many phases of the election being conducted in this year. This is a pretty straightforward question. Diplomatic boycott is related to which countries. And that's it. So if you noticed, question number 30 to 45, 15 questions were from GKCA. And back then in 2022, 75 questions, you only had to attempt 60. So if someone were to skip the current affairs completely, they would still be able to answer all 60 questions. That's how the odds were back then. You only had to prepare for 4 of the 6 topics that I mentioned earlier. Logical reasoning, analytical reasoning, numerical ability, general mental ability, GK, and CA. Out of these 6 topics, you could definitely prepare for only the logical reasoning and quant part. That's why they give 10 questions choice, because there has to be equal weightage. There has to be a fair chance for everyone based on the strengths and weaknesses. If quant is not your strength, then GK should be. If logical is not your strength, then quant and current affairs should be. But by giving one topic for nearly 30 questions, half the question paper, you're eliminating the equality between the aspirants, you're eliminating the assessment of strengths and weaknesses, and you're eliminating the ability to leave them in choice as well. So yeah, all of these from 1 to 15 were logical reasoning, and 31 to 60 were quant. That's what the situation was. Also this year, there's no questions about surds and indices. There's no dictionary questions in logical reasoning. There's none of these decoding and decoding. None of these. Now let's look at another UG entrance exam, which is pretty popular, competitive, and difficult, or of moderate level. That's CLAT, Common Law Admission Test. So this was the CLAT question paper of 2024. They have a section dedicated to current affairs and general knowledge. Of course, their pattern is different. They give passages, and based on that, they ask questions. But let's look at the topics they covered. So in general knowledge, they're asking about the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, which is an important part of modern history. This was in December 2023, by the way. And so they're describing a very easy question that anyone that studied 10th grade social science will be able to answer this, which instead is describing the passage. This is the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. So that's one. That's about 5 questions. The next one, they're asking about the Israel-Palestine conflict. Another very happening news right now. There's not a single question about Israel-Palestine this time, by the way. And they're very straightforward questions. What was the reaction of the international community? Historical context. Current hostilities known as which major conflict does Gaza-Israel resemble? Yom Kippur War. Then we have Chandrayaan 3. Also straightforward questions. India became the 4th country in the world to land a spacecraft on the moon. Role of Pragyan. One is to play a major role in bringing India to the forefront. ISRO. The lander and the rover name. The Prime Minister addressed. And the other countries that touch the surface of the moon. And then finally G20. Obviously also something that happened this year. And a few questions about G20. So what I'm aiming to establish is that even in a competitive exam like CLAT, the current affairs questions are always straightforward because it's a UG level exam. This isn't UPSC, this isn't APPSC or TSPSC or some state level exam. This is an SSC CGL exam. This isn't a PG exam. This is a UG exam. So what do 12th grade students know in terms of current affairs? They'll obviously study the general knowledge part. They'll cover the important topics. And those who looked at previous year question papers will cover these topics of general science, modern history, ancient history, medieval history. They will cover those topics. Those who are aspiring to do well in GT. And they'll also cover the most happening things this year. Like, for example, one possible question would have been the CEO of OpenAI, because ChatGPT is taking the world by storm. So you could have understood what the CEO of ChatGPT, OpenAI would be. Who would that be? Sam Altman. Or they could have asked about G20. They could have, or if they're wanted to ask about state leaders across the world, they could have taken the G20 countries or the India Middle East Economic Corridor, IMEC, or they could have taken about the Global Biogas Declaration. There were so many relevant topics that students could cover this year. But no, they chose to ask random questions such as, they're not random, they're all relevant, they're all things that happened this year. But we have to understand their relevance and their accessibility to students of 12th grade, who are also preparing for domain subjects, who are also preparing for board exams. Because CLAT is also, this is obviously conducted by a consortium of NLUs, but this is the perfect current affairs question paper if anyone would design it. They covered everything that happened in India and the world, all the happening events, Israel-Hamas war, the G20, and the Chandrayaan 3. That'll make about 15 questions. That's all you have to ask for a UG level entrance exam. It's a perfect, I believe that this section of current affairs and GK and CLAT is one of the most perfect, accurate question paper, and this should be a benchmark for all UG entrance exams on what they should ask. So now that we've compared and established that the CUET UG General Test was not an easy exam and it was not equal weightage, what do we have to do next? Obviously, all across social media, we see the hashtag that's on your bottom left corner, hashtag #reexamCUET, and this is obviously the best option because see, in Delhi, there's going to be a general test exam on May 29th anyways. And if they don't re-examine or reconduct the English and general test on May 20th, there will be a necessity for normalization, which the NTA said they'll do away with this year. They'll do away with it. But why create the need of normalization again? Suppose the Delhi question paper is really easy, then people that wrote the exam on May 15th, their marks will increase. But suppose the 29th exam is even harder, which I don't know how it could be, but suppose it is, then the people that wrote on May 15th, their marks will decrease even more. And based on the polls and comments of videos all across YouTube, people did not do well on general test. They did not do well. It's a blunt, straight up truth. No one did well on general test unless you somehow answered all the logical reasoning and quant questions and knew at 16 of the GK and CA questions. I don't think anyone can get a perfect score. There's a possibility, of course. There's always one person that can do it. But there's no point. I would recommend the NTA. Obviously, there's no way they'll see this video or anything, but my honest opinion is that they should reconduct the exam and stick to the pattern that they established last year. Stick to the pattern that they established. Heavy weightage of static GK, equal questions, 20 questions from GK and CA, 20 questions from logical reasoning, and 20 questions from quant. And cover all the topics in those 20. See, if you look at any competitive exam book, whether it be RS Agarwal, Quantum CAT, or any competitive exam books, there are exactly 20 topics, more or less, from each. There in logical reasoning and quant, there's 20 topics each. That's why they usually ask one question from each topic. And coming to GK and CA, if the NTA chose to only focus on general knowledge, especially science and modern history and medieval history, then stick to that pattern. What's the loss? What's the point of having 30 questions from one section and making them all difficult? And exactly, so if there is a re-examination, then this has to be the protocol. They have to stick to the pattern established in previous years, and there has to be equal and clear distribution of weightage among the 6 sections of the exam. So thank you, that concludes this video. Please consider commenting what your honest thoughts about general test were, what scores you're expecting, because this will set the tone for what the re-examination, if it ever happens, should look like. I'm not asking you to share this or promote this or anything, but this is an honest attempt to just discuss the ambiguities, difficulties, and honest level of the CUET general test exam, because there are several YouTube channels which have commercial motives that are trying to promote their exam as being, the CUET exam as being really easy. But in all honesty, compared to previous year questions, like I showed you, 2023, 2022, this is not an easy exam. This was difficult. And last year, 99th percentile was approximately 200 marks. So I can't even fathom what the cutoff or even the percentile to marks ratio will look like this year. So that concludes this video. Thank you so much for watching if you stay tuned till the end.